Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and this is a gameplay preview of the Dark Souls Remaster on PS4 Pro. Last week I was invited down to London to check it out at a preview event. I was allowed to capture footage only up until Solaire, so if you have any questions about the remaster, hopefully I can answer them in this video, and if not, ask them down below in the comments and I'll get back to you ASAP. One important thing I have to note, however: the footage in this video was captured using PS4's SharePlay function, which means it's encoded at 30 FPS. The game itself runs at 60 FPS, and the system was a PS4 Pro, so I can't speak for how the base PS4 and Xbox will perform. But let's start there, shall we? That is the most noticeable thing about this remaster: the frame rate. If you've played Dark Souls on the 360 or PS3, and even to PC to some extent, you'll notice the frame rate is all over the place. With the limited areas I had to work with in the preview, I tried my best to stress the frame rate. We weren't technically allowed to go past Solaire to the dragon on the bridge, but after I was done recording, I sat on the bridge for a while and let the dragon blast his fire everywhere. You no doubt remember that the wyvern's fire really destroyed the frame rate. I'm happy to report that if it did anything to the frame rate, I couldn't notice it. The frame rate didn't seem to hitch at all during my experience, minus on one occasion where I was approaching an enemy. I think it was the Black Knight, and the game froze for a split second, but considering this isn't final code, we can probably just put it up to some weird error along those lines. Overall, the performance was extremely solid. It felt like a locked 60 FPS. But I didn't have the equipment to measure frame rate, so let's see what Digital Foundry have to say on that front. One thing I can say: in the original release, it often seemed to be particle effects that would tank the frame rate, fire and fog gates in particular. I'm sure you remember how when you go through fog gates in Dark Souls, it really would destroy the frame rate. Not that it really mattered when you were going through a fog gate because, you know, you were invincible, but it was definitely jarring at times. And as it happens, fire and fog gates both looked different to me. I can only assume they have reworked them to both look better or different and be optimized so as not to chunk performance. Besides frame rate, what changes are we looking at? Well, not many. This remaster runs at 1080p on consoles, upscaled to 4K on the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, compared to the sub 720p of the 360 PS3 version, which was running at something like 1020 by 500-ish. And there have been very minor visual tweaks here and there. Fire, fog, god rays, the way items in the world glow on the floor, bloodstains and messages. If you were hoping to see something like Shadow of the Colossus remake, like a total rebuild, or having the game ported to Dark Souls 3 style, that's not happened. The visual changes are very minor and you'll only probably notice them side by side, aside from the more obvious things like, you know, the bloodstains and messages being a bit more vibrant, perhaps. Other than that, I didn't notice anything new. If the textures have been improved, it wasn't drastic enough to notice. One rather baffling exclusion is Ambient Occlusion. This can be implemented on the PC version via DSFix, and it really adds a lot to the game's depth, shall we say. If you don't know what it is, in a nutshell, Ambient Occlusion is a way to improve the shadows around certain things, such as on grass in Firelink. That's the basic way to look at it anyway. And it's quite a simple thing to implement, so the fact that there's no Ambient Occlusion, so far as I'm aware, is really weird. So rather than a remaster, this is more of a re-release. It is Dark Souls on PS4 with a basic frame rate and resolution bump. That's about it. Nothing new, nothing restored, nothing changed so far as I can see. No new item descriptions, no new items, no changed lore. Whether there are even typo or grammar corrections, I'm not sure because I didn't have access to every single item. But I would imagine it's identical to the base game. Still, Now you have access to the whole trilogy on Xbox One and PS4, which is nice. And they've added new multiplayer functionality, such as password matchmaking and 6-player online. There doesn't appear to be omnidirectional rolling, which a lot of people were asking me about, nor could I find any way to remap the jump function to left analog stick as opposed to circle or B, which nobody asked me about, but I hate jumping with circle, so it was like the first thing I looked for. It's a shame. Whilst not recording, like after I finished capturing, I did loop around to the top of Firelink Shrine and attempt walking along that slope that leads to the Crow Nest to see if the walking up slopes is hard and 60 FPS thing is still there, and it is. Problem is, I honestly don't remember if that was a problem at 30 FPS. As for jump distance and sliding down ladders at 60 FPS, I didn't notice any issues, but I'll be honest, I never had those issues on PC either, myself. One new thing I noticed that they included is a UI scale, a user interface scale in the options, so you can make the game's interface smaller. You know, the weapon and Estus flask, the health bars, you can shrink them. Weirdly, you can't make them larger, only smaller. I'm fairly certain, I'm 99% sure this was a feature in the S-Fix, if I'm not very much mistaken. Overall, it seems like it's worth it if you want the game again on Xbox or PS4. The problem here is PC. So far as I'm aware, there is no discount for owners of the original. There's no option to upgrade at the moment, and truth be told, this should be free for Steam owners. If you already own Dark Souls on Steam, this should be a free optional upgrade, like a Skyrim thing. Not one that you have to pay for, which is also going to fragment the player base. Because honestly, the PC version would effectively just be you paying for a gimped version of the S-Fix. That said, if your primary motivation is the online, then you will be getting a better experience, in theory. We didn't play online at the event, so I can't really say for sure, but the prospect of having dedicated servers for matchmaking and password-based matchmaking so you can play with friends, it should in theory be superior to the various connectivity mods. But then you have to also consider hackers. Right now in the PC version of Dark Souls, there is a mod, I think it's called Watchdog, that allows you to detect when players with unnormal items or effects are joining your session. It will detect something is weird and it lets you avoid them by disconnecting them. Is it perfect? No, but it detects many common cheats and hacks and edited characters. Judging from past releases, not only will the remaster have no form of anti-cheat, but using a mod like that might actually get you soft banned from online. All in all, it's a really hard sell on PC. Maybe they will release some upgrade or discount scheme which I think would be really smart if not giving it away for free, and maybe there'll be some proper security measures in place to stop hackers and cheaters, although I really wouldn't count on that. The PS4 and Xbox version, that's a lot easier to recommend, but if you already have the game on PC, you're going to have to think carefully about whether or not it represents any quantitative upgrade for you. Once it's out, and we know how the online situation is, how the modding situation is, we'll be able to judge it better. Because although Dark Souls mods are fairly simple, I do enjoy the texture mods, so if we can't use those, I don't know. But concerning the PC version right now, wait and see. I think that's about all I have to say on the matter for now. It's nice to play Dark Souls at 60 FPS, it's nice that we have the whole trilogy on one console. The Switch version is 30 FPS, but otherwise I know nothing about it. If there's any questions I didn't answer in this video, I will try and answer them in the comments. But remember that I only played the Undead Asylum through to Solaire, with a few very brief explorations elsewhere when I wasn't capturing, such as through the Undead Parish and back around to Firelink, and into the graveyard long enough to pick up the binoculars. I should have taken the Master Key and gone down to Blighttown, but I knew starting out that we could only go to Solaire. It just didn't occur to me. So, as for Blighttown's frame rate, judging from what I saw from the fire, I'm going to assume Blighttown is going to be fine, but I don't know for certainty. all I can say is that what I did see, the frame rate was good, it was fine. Until next time, however, thank you so much for watching.
Now that I am undead, I have come to this great land, the birthplace of Lord Gwyn, to seek my very own son. You find that strange? Well, you should. No need to hide your reaction. I get that look all the time. Oh, aha, I have a proposition. The way I see it, in a land brimming with hollows, so what do you say? It pleases me greatly. We are amidst a strange beat. The flow of time itself is convoluted. The very fabric wavers. There's no telling how much longer. But use this to summon one another as spirits and engage in. Of course, we are not the only ones engaged in it, but I am a warrior of the if you miss it.